Hey class, here's some thoughts on this next week's lesson on liberalism and the social gospel. Keep these thoughts in mind as you're reading through the subject materials. We'll start with liberalism. It's pretty easy, especially within our school of thought, going to Moody, to look down on these guys and to see them as heretics and 20th century manifestations of Arius, or whatever you want to call them. But in an attempt to kind of humanize these guys, it's important to remember that what they were doing, they viewed as right. They wanted to make Christianity make sense in the world that they were living in. Just for some points of reference, they're living in a time where science is starting to really kick into full gear. Things like evolution, textual criticism are really becoming topics of conversation, especially in Europe. Not as much in America, but we'll get to that later. So the liberals are really trying to make Christianity mesh with these new discoveries that are coming to light. How does Christianity work in a modern world? Or does it? Does it only work in a ancient one where people think, God throws lightning bolts down and whatnot? So that's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to destroy Christianity. They're trying to update it and make it make sense to those around them. People that you should be aware of. There was a pastor in New York City named Harry Emerson Fosdick who wrote a really influential essay called "Shall We Let the Fundamentalists Win?" Pretty easy to read, pretty short. If you want to check that out, it'll help you get into the liberals' mindset and why they're doing what they're doing. So don't dismiss the liberals too quickly. Learn from them, draw their thoughts, and ask yourself why questions. Why are they doing what they're doing? Don't just say, they're wrong, I'm not going to think of anything about them. Moving on to the social gospel. The social gospel is an attempt to make Christianity connect to real social problems of the day. In the next lesson, we'll talk about fundamentalism, which is in many cases a reaction against social gospel and liberalism. But we'll get there next week. But for our purposes right now, the social gospel is dealing with urban squalor. It's dealing with immigration, with really tight living conditions in city centers like New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Cleveland, those kind of things, where the working man doesn't have as much control and corporations are kind of using people. Not kind of, really. An example of this is you can read a book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle, which takes place in Chicago in the meat stockyards around 1900. And it really does provide an honest look at how things were in the working conditions for immigrants around the turn of the century, 1900s. Lots of sickness, not able to get work, no unions to speak for you. Pick up the book. It's a good read. So the social gospel is trying to answer some of these questions because to them, the fundamentalists aren't really interested in these questions. The fundamentalists are just trying to keep the Bible holy. Whereas the social gospelists are trying to make the gospel and Christianity make sense to all these immigrants that are coming over who are Catholic, who are, Irish, who are German, who don't really fit into the social makeup of America during that time. And so there's a lot of fear and a lot of questions going on around this time. A proponent of the social gospel is Walter Rauschenbusch, who is obviously German. And he wrote a book called Christianity and the Social Crisis, where he talks about these issues in much more depth and tries to explain and give a good reason for why he's doing what he's doing and why he's holding the gospel in a different way than the fundamentalists were. So I hope that kind of fills things in for you, for the liberals and the social gospel movement. These aren't two groups that are just kind of trying to throw Christianity under the bus. They're not trying to send people to hell. They're trying to make Christianity make sense, especially in a world that is increasingly confused and difficult to interact with. They're trying to make sense of a lot of bad situations. So, good luck with all of your studies, and email me if you have any questions. Thanks.